inspector based at Croydon Police Station, and I'm responsible for neighbourhood policing.
So, let's ask some questions. So, the youths of like Croydon and stuff and just all over, they feel like they're not being heard, and some people are intimidated of you guys. Like, why do you guys have, like, why do you think they have such a bad image of you?
That's a really good question. I think from my perspective, we're not scary, but I get what you're saying. And for me, it's really important that we get behind the uniform that I wear, because we're all human beings, and the police officers that are out there, I don't know of a single one that wants to make life difficult for young people. But I know how that can feel, being a young person, being confronted by police officers in uniform. It can be quite intimidating. Every police officer out there has signed a piece of paper and sworn an oath. And that oath talks about how we are there to protect the public, everybody, young and old. We want to make sure that people are safe. What that means is, at times, we have to be confrontational, but at times we can be our normal selves. And it's a really difficult balance. And obviously the police officers that are out there, in Croydon and everywhere else, many of us are over 18, and some of us are much older than that, like me. So when we engage with young people, I don't have the same level of credibility, A, because I'm in a uniform, and B, because I'm much older. You know, I'm probably the same age or older than some of your teachers and some of your parents. So when you sort of are confronted by someone like me, you think, well, why should I listen to this guy? Why should I listen to Craig on the street? He's got a uniform. What does he know about my life? What does he know about me as an individual? But that's not, it's understandable, but it's not something that I think we can't get over. And I think if we make policing and police officers more accessible, if we start to hear the voices of young people in a different conversation, I think we can start to break some of those barriers down. And hopefully, by talking to you today, we'll start to do that. And people will hopefully start to see that actually we're humans, and we have the same feelings, the same family lives, the same issues that everybody else has. We just come to work to do a slightly different job than many other people.
You see, like, when you're around Croydon, just like you're on, I don't know if you're on patrol or not, like, why do you, do you just randomly stop and search kids, or is there a reason why you stop and search them?
We don't randomly stop and search, or we shouldn't. What stop and search is there to do is to protect the community. And we can stop and search for a whole number of different reasons, but we have to have a reason to do that. So for example, I did a stop and search just last week of an individual who'd been accused of shoplifting, so stealing something from a shop. He wasn't very pleased about being searched, and it turned out that he hadn't stolen anything, and I let him go. But as long as I am fair with him, and we have certain rules that we have to abide by, where when we do stop and search, and we can talk about those if you wish, or talk about them another day. But that stop and search meant that that member of the community was stopped. They were effectively held there whilst I searched them, and obviously that's an intimidating place for them to be, and particularly for young people when they're stop and searched. It is intimidating. It's not designed to be, but I get why that people will feel that way. The reasons that we stop and search people are things like we believe them to be carrying drugs, which are illegal, and we have to uphold the law. That's what police officers do. But also for things like knives. We know in Croydon that over the last 12 to 15 months there's been 10 murders in Croydon. I don't want young people or anybody else to be the subject of knife crime. Knife crime is a horrendous issue, and we have to stop people to try and find whether or not they're carrying knives. But that shouldn't be random. That shouldn't be we're stopping you because you're in the street and therefore you've got a knife. We stop people because people have told us that people might be carrying knives, or because they match a description of someone that somebody has seen carrying a knife. And then we search that person to see whether it's the person that we're looking for. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. The success rate for us finding knives is about 2 people in 10 when we stop for knives, which actually I think is quite good because people will throw them away before they leave the scene. People will discard them or hide them in different places. And we find them in different places as well. And we do different tactics, not just iron search, to try and take knives off the street. And if you look at what we've done in the Croydon area in the last 12 months, we've taken over 160 knives off the streets of Croydon. That's a success, because if only one of those was going to be used to stab a young person, that's got to be a good thing to do. I don't want anybody to be subject to a knife crime, and nor do I want, as I have done before, to be knocking on a parent's door to say, I'm very sorry, your son and daughter is in hospital, or worse, because of what's happened.
Okay, so leading off what he just said, what kind of tactics do you guys do to like not try to scare off the young people? Because of course I know as a young person, if someone just came and asked, like a police officer just came up to me and asked to search me, I'd be getting more defensive, like why I didn't do anything. So what do you guys do except from like start to go up against them, so then they feel like they're being targeted and then it just escalates? So what do you guys do?
Well, it should be a conversation. There will be times when we can't have a conversation, particularly if you're dealing with someone that you think has got a knife on them. You have to stop them and stop them from harming themselves or anybody else quite quickly, which means you have to sort of get hold of people and physically restrain them at times. But that's rare. What we should be doing is going up to people, having a conversation, hi, how are you? If they then become aggressive, or if they then start to hide things or act in certain ways, and we're trained to spot certain things, then actually we will potentially take hold of people at that point and say, look, we're going to stop and search you for this reason. So I would encourage people to be as polite as they can be. You know, I get that they don't want to be stopped, but just say, look, I'm walking home, I'm doing this, I've come from there, and that's where I'm going. I haven't got anything on me. If you want to have a look at my bag, feel free. That's the quickest and easiest thing to do, is to have that conversation, because the way that we interact with everybody is that we treat people the way that we are being treated. So if, I had this the other day, I was talking to a group of people, I went in and said, literally, hi guys, because they're a group of guys, how are you? And I got a load of abuse back because they didn't want to talk to a police officer. No, that's okay. But if I'd have had, look buddy, don't really want to talk to a cop right now, can you leave us alone? That's a very different conversation to a lot of swearing, shouting and abuse that I got, which actually creates that barrier. And it's a two-way thing. If I'd gone in there and said, right, what are you doing, why are you here? Tell me what you are doing, and started pointing and shouting at them, then I deserve that abuse, because that's not unreasonable. But it is a two-way thing. So it's important for me to be polite, courteous and human with people that I stop and serve. But equally, if that is a two-way process and a conversation, it's a much easier interaction.
Sorry, can I just cut you? Do you promote that? So do you promote to like children and teenagers, telling them that if they act a certain way, then police won't be as confrontal as they are? So do you guys tell people that? We try.
In the training that we do for police officers, we do things like role plays, where we get young people in and do the role play, so the young people act as police officers, and then vice versa. So we have an interaction that's going on there. And that's worked really well with some of our younger officers that are coming out of training school now, where we're teaching that, and we're trying to show them that actually it is about a conversation. I think one of the things that the Metropolitan Police and other police forces across the country have an issue with is we don't have enough time to train as much as we would like. So sometimes it's difficult to get people in a room and explain this stuff to them so that it goes in, because we haven't got time to train them in the way that we would like to do. But there's opportunities for that to take place, and we work with schools. I know we've seen the schools officer in the last year or so, but I have 14, 15 schools officers that work alongside teachers in schools. We also come to community events, open days, and we try and get involved as much as we can. with the people that we have. But I have a limited amount of people that I can do that with. But we're getting better, but it's a learning process, and police officers have to learn as well. Particularly when you're new in the role as a police officer. It can be quite intimidating working as a police officer out there, because you put this uniform on and people all of a sudden think you're inhuman. Or worse, the police officer thinks that they're indestructible. That's not the case at all. And we have to train people to effectively get used to the uniform that we're wearing, because it represents something. It represents law and order. And, we have to uphold the law. So for some young people want to smoke cannabis. I understand that, but it's illegal. So I, as a police officer, have to uphold the law. Whether or not I agree with that, and there are some bits of the law I don't agree with. There are other bits of the law I do agree with, but I'm a police officer, and I have to uphold that regardless of my understanding and my beliefs. And I will do that because that's what I signed up to do many, many years ago. And every police officer should be in the same position as that.
Have you ever felt that young people are intimidated because of your uniform?
Yeah, I have. And sometimes I attend meetings in a pair of jeans and a t-shirt. I remember going to a school for many, many weeks because there was a group of young people I was trying to engage with that didn't like police officers at all, and were very, very anti-police. So I went to the school and I talked about other things. Talked about all sorts of bits and pieces with them. In a pair of jeans and a t-shirt, because I didn't tell them I was a cop for 12, 15 meetings. And I wanted to get out of them what they felt about police officers, and eventually I came into the room in the police uniform, and they were amazed. This individual who likes drawing, likes running, likes cycling, has got a family, all of those things, he's a cop. And they were really surprised. But actually it worked really well. So there are times when I don't wear a uniform when I'm talking to young people.
Other police men or women, do they do that? So not just you, but do they do that often? So do they go to schools, try to connect with the young people and then tell them that they're a cop afterwards, so they can kind of get a feel that they're secure and that they don't really have to be intimidated by you guys, so they can come and speak to you?
Yeah. We have a number of schools officers that go in and work with the schools, and we also have beat officers that operate within each ward. So every single ward in London has two dedicated beat officers and a PCSO. Do you know the difference between the two? A PCSO has a few less powers, but they're designed to work really in communities all the time. So they're out and about on the ground and talking to people and just interacting with people in a slightly different way. They wear a uniform, but it's a slightly different uniform, and they don't have a power of arrest. But they are there to sort of be the eyes and ears of the community and to work with the police. So I have, within Croydon, I have 24 wards currently, and each of those wards has 2 police officers and a PCSO that work really, really hard with the community in every single aspect, whether it's young people or old people. It doesn't matter. To try and get that sort of engagement going. With some communities it's easier than others, but we do our best with what we've got. Obviously we also have to answer a lot of 999 calls and a lot of calls for when people want us. So that effectively is what we do, sort of bread and butter wise. That's our priority. And we have to deal with counter-terrorism and mental health and lots of other things as part of our job, which actually makes it a really interesting job. But it means that we can't always be there in the communities and in schools.
And what's your most scariest thing you had to do to solve? Like when something to do with knife crime, or there's been a stabbing or a shooting, what's the most scariest one you've solved?
The scariest one we've solved? Well, certainly from a personal perspective, I was involved with the Millie Dowler murder inquiry and spent a lot of time with the family of Millie Dowler. As you may recall, she went missing some years ago now in Walton-on-Thames in Surrey, and was found having been killed in Hampshire. I got to know the family really, really well, and when you do that, when you go to those families and you talk to them, It's a difficult process. I've also had, again as a young PC, young constable in a town centre, I had a young lady die in my arms as a result of a drugs overdose. And the last thing she said to me was, "Can you tell my dad?" And that really upset me. You know, I'm a human being, and to have somebody die in your arms is really upsetting. But to have somebody die because they've taken the wrong kind of drugs, or the drugs that she'd taken drugs once before, and she liked how it felt. She tried it again, and it killed her because of what they mixed with those drugs. And I had to go and tell the family, and that was really hard. We work really hard when people are stabbed, when people are dealt with or in hospitals and things. Police officers desperately want to solve those crimes, desperately, particularly when it involves young people. And I think what really frustrates me is when I speak to a young person in the hospital who's been stabbed, and they tell me to go away because they're either fearful of repercussions or they don't trust police to do something about it. I want to do something about it. Every police officer I've ever spoken to is desperate to help young people, to make a difference and to take knives off streets, because we don't want young people to die. Stab wounds are horrible things, they really are, and I've dealt with many of them. When you get a young person in a hospital who refuses to talk to you, who refuses to make a statement, and then refuses all contact with the police, and sometimes the family do the same thing, so the family refuse all contact with the police as well sometimes. That is so frustrating, because we really want to solve it, and the only way we can ever solve it, the only way we can truly as a community make a difference, is when we work together. Because I'm one of very many police officers, there are lots of us in London, but I don't have eyes and ears everywhere, and I'm only a tiny part of a massive community that is diverse, exciting, and is London. I have to work with everybody in that community to take knives off the streets and make the community safer. So I need your help, I need everybody else's help, I need everybody that watches this in the future to help us. You know, provide us with information. You can do that anonymously through Crime Stoppers, you can talk to your teachers, you can talk to your parents, but for goodness sake, tell us what's going on. Because unless we do that, unless we take knives off streets, unless we make a choice to not carry a knife when we go out the door, unless we make a choice to say, no, enough is enough. You know, these are my friends, these are my community that are being stabbed, that are being hurt, that are being harmed by knives. Unless we do that together, I will never be successful. And that's so frustrating. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So in your job, how does it feel like, okay, do you sometimes, being like in the police force, sometimes when you make assumptions that cloud your judgment, and then like you don't get the, so imagine I committed a crime and someone else got blamed for it, and then they got put through like a lot, and they got put in like prison and everything, and then they came out and I'm still there like stabbing people and hurting them. Do they come back for like justice, like revenge? Has that ever happened?
Revenge, I can't say it never happens, but I've never known of it personally. But I know what you mean. If police have got it wrong, then we have to be open and tell people we've got it wrong and put it right as quickly as we can. And there are lots of cases where police have got it wrong. We're human, we make mistakes, just like everybody else. The difference when you're in jobs like policing is you're dealing with people's lives. Not just the individual that's being stabbed, but also the suspect, the person that apparently has done the crime. And you're potentially putting that person in prison for many, many years. So we have to be absolutely certain that our evidence and the information that we have that goes to the court is spot on. It really is, and we have to be certain that they have committed the crime. So we do everything we can to try and make sure that's the case, but there are times when we get that wrong. What we have to do is try and you know, try and make it as few occasions as possible. So obviously we don't want to make mistakes, we don't want to put the wrong people into prison. That's the last thing we want to do. I want to make sure, and police officers want to make sure, that we put the right people in prison that deserve to be in prison. And actually, at times, the people don't deserve to be in prison. Actually, they deserve a second chance. And the courts and the process is designed for us to have that opportunity to say to young people, to people that carry knives, you've made a mistake, you need to learn, and the sentences are designed for that. So we offer people different courses, and suspended sentences, so that when we go through the court process, if people don't deserve to go to prison, they don't. And they get a second chance at putting their lives right and doing something different, making that positive
Yeah, I've
choice.
heard of that before. So I think it was a few years ago, some children pushed someone in between some train tracks and they got run over, a child. And when they grew up, they got their names changed and they got to restart their life because they did that as a child. But can that happen? So if someone stabs someone, could their life be turned around? So when they grow up, so as a teenager, if they hurt someone or made the wrong choice, could they restart their life when they grow up?
I think it's a personal choice. I think it's their choice. They will have to serve some sort of justice process and go through a justice process, and that will be very difficult for them, and it will, and it might leave them very bitter because they feel that they've been dealt with badly. But it is their own personal choice to move on from that and to try and do something positive with their lives. That would be difficult. I can't imagine how difficult that would be. But I have to believe, because otherwise I wouldn't do my job, that there are people out there that make genuine mistakes. If you carry a knife, then I don't believe that everybody that's carrying a knife wants to stab somebody, because it would be in a very desperate place if that was the case. Some people carry knives because they want to defend themselves, because they're fearful of being stabbed. But most people that carry a knife, if they then become in a fight, or if they get involved in something and end up stabbing somebody, in their minds in self-defence, they have chosen to take that knife to that situation. And as a result, they may actually serve a prison sentence. They could go to prison for life if they're deemed to be murdered, to murder someone, to kill someone. So you have to make lots of positive choices, lots of choices throughout your life. Some of those are really basic. Do I get up in the morning and have breakfast? That's a really basic choice. But I think it's also a basic choice, do I leave the house with a knife in my hand, or in my bag, or in my pocket, or down my trouser leg? That's a choice. And you don't have to make the choice to do that. So I think if people make the right choices, and sometimes they're really difficult, but sometimes they're not. And if you go through life making positive choices for yourself, how can I make a difference to people's lives today in a positive way? How can I make a difference to my own life? If I need help, how can I get it? What can I do today that makes a tiny difference to my life in a positive way? If you can do that, then I think actually we'll all be in better, perhaps all, including me. And I try and do that every day. I try and make a little bit of a difference every day. That's why I joined the police service. I want to make a bit of a difference. And I know I can't make a massive difference, but I know I can make a bit of a difference.
You see, when one of your officers radio you, what's the myth about a suspect that's been stabbed someone and then on the loose? What do they normally dress as when you're searching for them? Like, what do they wear most of the time? Like, when you look for someone?
Or police officers?
Yeah.
We tend to patrol in full uniform. At times we patrol in plain clothes, so jeans and a t-shirt. We will always have radios and bits and pieces with us. And when you're stopped and searched, you should always be video recorded. So the officers will have a video camera with them. That's not to intimidate you, it's actually to ensure that the officer is absolutely fair and make sure that they give you your rights and has a meaningful conversation with you. And if also it allows you to, if you want to complain, do so within a period of time, a short period of time, because we can then look at the camera footage and see whether the officer has done something wrong. And if they have, then absolutely we'll deal with that. Of course we will. I don't want any officer to be rude, to break the law themselves, because that undermines everything that I stand for and everything that I think we all stand for as a community. We want police officers on the streets that are helpful, that want to make a difference, that work with the community, that are fair. We all have bad days, of course we do, but actually police officers need to learn if they've done something wrong. So when you're stopped, you will always have an opportunity to have a search record. That opportunity is for 12 months. If you'd like one, just ask, can I have a copy of the search record? And then if you feel that you've not been dealt with properly, come and talk to us. And you have the right to complain about the officer. We'll have a look at the camera footage and we'll see whether that was fair, what they did. And we'll look at the forms and we'll look at the officer's statements and what they say about it, and yours, and we'll listen to you as well, of course. And between us, we'll decide whether that officer needs to learn, because they've had a bad day and perhaps we're just a little bit rude, or whether they did nothing wrong, or whether it's a matter of just having a conversation so that the person that was stopped understands the reason why more foot. But I've sort of answered your question. Does that fully answer your question?
Yeah.
You see how we're trying to put a stop to the knife crime at the moment. Do you feel like what we're doing so far has been effective, considering all of the everything that's going on?
Yeah. I think there's much more that we can all do. I think there's much more that collectively as a community we need to do. For me, as I said a little bit earlier, we have to work as a community. So it's no use the police or teachers or the local authority, the council. It's no use us working as little isolated groups doing our thing to try and stop knife crime. We have to work as a community. And that means that I should listen more to young people, which is why I'm here. I should listen to your views, and I should take those into account much more fully than I've done before, so that we understand from the police perspective how better to make your lives better. That makes sense. But also, I think it's a responsibility for all of us. Obviously, good people are working alongside us anyway in terms of what you're doing to have your voice heard. So you're already doing some great stuff. And I know that Music Relief really passionately believe in giving young people a really meaningful voice in the community. And I'm absolutely supportive of that. But anything that you think we can do more of, I'm up for that conversation. I would like, as an example, to have a youth forum, or I call it a youth forum, but young people coming to us and talking to us once a month, once every quarter, whichever suits, in a sort of wider forum. So we get a big group of people together and they talk about the issues that are affecting policing, and we talk about how we are performing as a police force, and we'll give you the sort of data of what that looks like, because you're as important as members of the community and as leaders in communities as anybody else. And we have lots of forums for councillors, for MPs, for members of the who are adults to come and talk to us and sort of to engage with us and ask us questions. But we don't have very many for young people, and we need more of that. Stuff that I do, I should be open and frank with you and say, what do you want to know? If you want to know how crime is going in your area, talk to your local officers, and we should be able to put you in a position where you understand that. So you have an opportunity to say, hang on a minute, police officers of Croydon, you're not doing your job properly. You need to engage with us in a different way, or you need to do this more differently or better. We should have those conversations, and we should treat you in the way that you should be treated, which is with absolute respect, and give you the voice that you need and deserve in policing.
So I was going to ask, in relation to the question that he asked about the body cameras and stuff, and how like if there's something wrong, we can report it to you. But I was wondering, because obviously as young people, we don't know the law as much as like a trained police officer would.
Sure.
So I feel like a lot of the time, some police officers will take that to their advantage, because we don't know, like when they start bringing up certain laws, we don't know like if that's true or not. And then even if they've mistreated us, a lot of the time we won't know if we're in the wrong or they're in the wrong. You know? So I think it's important to like teach young people like their rights, you know what I mean? So that when you are mistreated, then you know you are, and if you're not, then you know you're not. Because a lot of people go home thinking they've been mistreated, even though they might have not been, or the other way around.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and that's a really good point. We have to have, when we stop and search people, we need to put the camera on to stop and search people. Officers will sometimes be in plain clothes and can still stop you. The reasons that we stop people should be open and honest, so the officer will say, I am stopping you because, and tell you why you're being stopped. But if you're not sure, you should be able to have the confidence to say, can you just explain to me again why you're being stopped? The things the common things that we stop people for are stolen property. So if we think, as I said earlier, I stopped somebody last week who a member of the public said that person has just stolen something. So I stopped them and searched them looking for that stolen item. And that's perfectly lawful, I can do that. The camera was on and I explained things to them. But equally, if somebody is smoking cannabis, cannabis is illegal in this country. There was lots of talk about it being legalised in different places, and I think that's caused some confusion. But it is still illegal, and we can stop and search for drugs, not just cannabis, but any illegal drug. And that's something called Section 23 of the Misuse of Drugs Act. And you'll probably hear the officers, because we don't tend to explain things, because cops are like that, as clearly as we could. You'll say things like, oh, I'm stopping you under the Section 23 of the Misuse of Drugs Act. And you go, what on earth is that? So just ask, I'm really sorry. I don't have a legal textbook in my pocket. Can you just tell me what that is? Oh, what it is that drugs are illegal in this country, and I have a right to stop you in law to find out whether you've got any drugs on you. And I've been told by a member of the public that you might have, or I've seen you, and I think you have drugs on you. Or something along those lines. You should get some explanation as to why you're being stopped. And of course the big thing that we're trying to look for at the moment is to take knives off streets. So where we've got information that somebody is carrying it's called a prohibited weapon, or a blade, we don't call it, but it's a knife, it's a hammer, it's something that they're going to harm somebody with, metal bar, could be all sorts of things. Could be as simple as a bottle that they've picked up and intend to have somebody move ahead of it. We can search for those things. So I can in law, I don't have to be in uniform, but I do have to identify myself as a police officer. So I can't just run up to you in a pair of jeans and a t-shirt and grapple you to the ground and search your pockets, because that would be so wrong. But what I can do is say, hello, my name is, I believe you're carrying a knife or a bottle, I'm going to search you for that. Do you have it on you? And have a conversation. Sometimes those conversations are not possible, particularly if people are running off from us, or if people are clearly about to start a fight and that kind of stuff. We want to just stop the fight, stop the individual, get control of that individual in as safe a way as possible. And that's also why you'll see on the streets where more than one police officer is trying to detain somebody. So by detain, I mean sort of take them to the ground, or hold them, or put handcuffs on, or do something to get control of that person. If one person does that, one police officer does that, the individual that we are trying to stop or to take control of is much more likely to get hurt, because I would have to use much greater force than if I've got 2 or 3 police officers to do that for me, because we can take an arm each, we can put handcuffs on, we can do those things. It looks, I know it looks, when you see it on the films, it looks awful. It looks like there's lots and lots of cops bundling on top of somebody and trying to attack them. That's not the case. What we're trying to do is get control of that person safely. And what you will see if you stand back, and there's no problem at all with you filming it, if you think that something done wrong, don't for a moment think that we're we can't be filmed. I don't have a great side for filming. I'm not very photogenic, but I don't mind being filmed in the slightest. And police officers can be filmed in the streets, of course we can. What is unhelpful is when somebody comes up to me and puts the camera that far away from their face when I'm trying to do something. And don't be surprised if the camera gets moved away because I'm trying to take control of somebody or do something. And I've had that quite a lot where people shove the camera in my face and say, "You're being filmed." That's difficult when you're trying to arrest somebody or just had a fight with somebody that's attacked somebody else. It's less helpful when you do this. But yeah, that's why we have more than one police officer to control somebody. So even just walking somebody from, I don't know, let's say they've stolen something from a shop and they've been arrested for shoplifting, walking somebody from a shop to a van, to put them in a van or a car to take them to a custody suite to deal with them. That sometimes takes 2 police officers. Sometimes we have an arm each, or sometimes the van driver gets out and assists them with that. That's not because we want to overpower that individual.
One second, sorry.
But sometimes it is. Sometimes we need to take control of that person. And sometimes they are young people. In my career, I have fought a 92-year-old lady, and I have fought a 10-year-old boy. And the reality is that the 92-year-old lady had some mental health issues, and I needed to control her to get her out of her house because her house wasn't safe and she didn't want to leave. She was a very proud lady. The 10-year-old boy had some issues at home, and I needed to control that child to make sure that he was safe. I didn't want to fight either of those people. Why would I? I don't like fighting, actually. But they were very, very difficult fights, and actually it took a lot of people, a lot of police officers, to control both the 92-year-old lady, who was very, very frail, and the 10-year-old boy, who was very young and also frail because of it. Because unless we did that, we could have really hurt those people. That's the last thing we wanted to do. So, yeah, we're sometimes placed in really difficult situations where we have to make judgment calls about how we deal with things. And we don't get it right all the time, as I've said. And we have to learn. But you should be entitled to just ask the question. Can you just explain to me why I don't understand?